They gave me a chair, a headset, and a foam-padded table in Tier Assessment Chamber 7, and told me I was Earth's technical liaison to the Vethaal Cooperative's Planetary Classification Bureau. I am a retired municipal engineer from Duluth, Minnesota. For 38 years, I fixed culverts. I was chosen because I happened to be standing near the right door when the right person needed a warm body with a laminated credential, and because my daughter works in the consulate and owed someone a favor. I did not ask questions. I brought my dog. Fig is a St. Bernard and Mastiff cross, 9 years old, 162 pounds of slow opinions and deep indifference. He smells on his best days like a wool blanket left in the rain. On his average days, he smells like whatever he found interesting in the last parking structure we walked through. He has a gray muzzle, ears like worn leather, and a way of lowering himself onto cold floors that suggests the entire enterprise of standing has been an insult to his dignity for some years now. He fit under the document table. That was the only criterion I applied. The cooperative's classification process is thorough. I will give them that. 6 sessions over 6 weeks, each one lasting between 4 and 7 hours, conducted by a lead classifier named Wardell and her panel of 7, and a rotating cast of specialist assessors who came and went as the subject matter required. They had people, beings, for everything. Tectonic volatility, atmospheric composition, and oxygen saturation, which made the assessor in charge of that section physically uncomfortable enough that she had to step out twice. Oceanic biomass indices, hydrological cycle threat ratings, 17 distinct atmospheric particulate categories. The cooperative has been classifying planets for, as best I can gather, longer than Rome was a city, and it shows. They do not miss things. They work from a manifest, Earth's full resource and biosphere manifest, translated into 7 cooperative dialects and cross-referenced against 12 classification frameworks, runs to something in the range of 40,000 entries. Wardell's panel had been working through it methodically for 6 weeks, and by the morning of the 6th session, they were nearly done. 1 entry remained. I know this because Wardell told me at the start of the session, in the flat, clipped cadence she used for all procedural announcements, while her aide distributed updated session agendas around the table. This session will address the final manifest entry, she said, through my headset. Domestic companion fauna. Class unspecified. Estimated completion, 4 minutes, followed by panel deliberation and tier assignment. I nodded. I wrote the time in my notebook, 4 minutes. Fig was under the table. He had been under the table for every session. He had been walked, watered, and fed his breakfast before we came in, and he had found his usual patch of floor beneath my chair and settled onto it with the particular bonelessness he achieves when he has decided a location is acceptable for the foreseeable future. He was asleep before the session formally opened. I had grown accustomed to the way the cooperative's support staff entered and left the chamber without looking at the floor. I had noticed this in the 2nd session, thought nothing of it, and filed it away somewhere in the back of my mind beside other things I had not yet found categories for. Wardell opened the entry. The manifest listing was brief. Domestic companion fauna non-enumerated. Classification pending biometric sample. She looked at me across the table. Do you have a representative specimen? He's under my chair, I said. There was a pause. Under your chair, she repeated. He's been there every session. Another pause. This one longer. The aide to Wardell's left. A younger assessor I knew only as the one who handled atmospheric data and had the secondary coloring of old slate, turned very slowly in his seat and looked under the table. His reaction was not loud. That is the thing people get wrong when they imagine these moments. It is never loud. His dorsal plates made a sound I can only describe as a click, quiet enough that I might have missed it, and then he did not move. He sat extremely still. He stopped making eye contact with anything in the room. Wardell looked at her aide. Her aide remained still. She looked at me. Then she looked at the floor. Not directly under the table. She looked at a point approximately 4 feet to my left, the way you look at something you want to assess without appearing to assess it. Her secondary breathing membranes, which had been cycling at their normal rest rate for 6 weeks, were not cycling. Fig made the sound he makes when he changes position in his sleep. A low, loose exhale, followed by the soft concussion of his head relocating itself against the floor. His tail moved twice. That was all. Deathworlder set down her stylus. She did not pick it up again. The panel sat in a silence I did not understand at the time, but have come to understand better in the months since. It was not the silence of people consulting data. It was the silence of people whose bodies had arrived at a conclusion before their minds filed the paperwork. Deathworlder's secondary membranes were still. Two assessors on the far side of the table had assumed postures I had not seen before. Compact, careful, the posture of creatures who have decided, for reasons not entirely within their control, not to occupy very much space. The atmospheric assessor had not moved since looking under the table. Deathworlder cleared her throat. Or the cooperative equivalent of that, a clipped exhalation through her upper respiratory filter. "I believe," she said, "we can table the final entry." I looked up from my notebook. The session notes say 4 minutes. "Pending supplementary review," she said. "The panel has sufficient data to proceed to tier deliberation." She gathered her materials. The motion was unhurried. Everything Deathworlder did was unhurried, but she was doing it. "We will reconvene for the tier announcement in 48 hours. Thank you for your attendance, Liaison Ooms." The panel filed out. It took 4 minutes. Not for the final entry, for the room to empty. I sat there for a while after, with my tea going cold and my notebook open to a page with very little on it, and I listened to Fig breathe. His chest rose and fell against the floor, slow and even. His tail moved once more, without apparent cause, the way it sometimes does when he is dreaming about something pleasant. The tier announcement came 31 hours later. Earth was designated Tier 1. That is the classification the cooperative applies to worlds under ongoing, active, and non-negotiable sovereign protection. The announcement was brief. There was no public deliberation. There were no qualifications attached to the designation. No review period. No conditions. I filed a query with the Bureau asking for the technical basis of the tier determination. The response I received, 3 days later, referenced 6 weeks of atmospheric and geological data, a full biosphere assessment, and a final notation I had to have translated twice before I was confident I was reading it correctly. It said, in rough translation, classification complete, all relevant fauna assessed. Fig got a piece of string cheese when we got back to the consulate. He accepted it, with the gravity he applies to all food, patient, present, without ceremony. Then he found the patch of afternoon sun near the window and lowered himself onto it, and his eyes closed, and his breathing slowed to the register of a thing that has never once in its life had a reason to be afraid. I pulled out my notebook. I still had 4 minutes unaccounted for. I left the line blank.